All right, so today we're going to jump right in and deconstruct a really interesting piece of writing called Kingdom Living Through Obedience. We're going to look at its core message, a super specific call to action it makes, and then we'll see how that ties into this huge global mission it's all about. Okay, so everything, and I mean everything in this text, is built on this one single verse from Matthew. Right from the get-go, it sets up this really powerful tension that basically fuels the entire message. And what's that tension? Well, it's the massive difference between just saying you believe something and actually doing something about it. So yeah, let's dig into that a little deeper. How does the source actually lay out this conflict between words and actions?
Well, it draws a really clear line in the sand. You've got two sides. On one side, you have the words, right? The profession of faith, just saying, Lord, Lord. But on the other side, and this is the key part, you have the action, doing the will of the Father. And the argument here is pretty direct. Getting into the kingdom of heaven, according to this text, it all hangs on that second part, the doing.
Okay, so if it's all about doing, you might be wondering, what does that actually look like? What does it mean? Let's dive into how the source defines this big idea of kingdom living.
And funny enough, the text asks that exact same question and then gives a pretty straightforward answer.
And here it is. According to the source, kingdom living isn't just one thing you do. No, it's a whole lifestyle. It's about surrender, it's about service, and it's about making sure your actions line up with God's word. The big takeaway here is that this is an active, day in, day out process. It's a way of being, not just a one-and-done statement of faith. All right, so that's the what of kingdom living. But what about the how? I mean, how do you go from this big idea to what you do every day? Well, the source gets really practical here and lays out a direct, personal call to action.
And it's broken down into 3 really clear steps. Step 1, you're supposed to look inward. Take a kind of personal inventory of your life. Then step 2 is to take just one concrete step of obedience, just one thing. And finally, step 3 is to trust. Trust that this one action isn't isolated, but it's part of something much bigger. You can see it's laid out as a super personal, almost reflective journey.
But here's where things get bigger. This call to action, it doesn't just stop with you. The text then kind of zooms way out, and it connects that personal act of obedience to a massive global mission. And when I say massive, I mean it. The scale is, well, it's staggering. The goal is actually called Operation 500 Million Souls for Christ. That is a huge, incredibly ambitious, and very specific number to aim for.
So you might be asking, how can someone even get involved in something that big? Well, the text lays out 3 specific roles you can take on. You can be a prayer partner, a volunteer missionary, or what they call a kingdom investor. And what's really interesting about this is that it gives people different levels of engagement, right? It creates a pathway for pretty much anyone to get involved, no matter what their situation is. And to make all this happen, to support this mission, they've built a pretty impressive system. Let's actually take a peek at the scope of their global prayer network to see just how organized this whole thing is. Wow, okay, just look at this. This table really shows you the level of coordination we're talking about. They have specific prayer times scheduled all over the world in all these different time zones, from Nigeria, the US, the UK, all the way to the Philippines. It's a highly organized 24/7 global effort. It really shows that constant prayer is a huge, foundational piece of this entire mission. Okay, so we've seen the personal side of things, and we've seen the massive global mission it connects to. But what's the why? What's the ultimate reason behind all of this? Well, the text is super clear about the final goal. So, when you boil it all down, everything we've talked about, that personal obedience, the giant global mission, the prayer network, it's all framed as preparation for something. The single overarching goal is to prepare your heart and life for the glorious return of Jesus Christ. So that future event, that's positioned as the main reason for all the urgency and all the action that's required today. And that pretty much brings us to the end of our deconstruction. As you can see, the source material lays out this really clear path, starting from just one verse and expanding all the way to a global mission. And it leaves us with a pretty deep question to chew on. What does a model like this, one that puts so much emphasis on action over just words, tell us about the relationship between what we believe and how we behave? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this breakdown.